Bangladesh burns. The streets, once vibrant with life, are choked with tear gas and the echo of protest. The air, once filled with the scent of spices and jasmine, carries the acrid tang of smoke and fire. For weeks, the nation has been gripped by a fever, a storm of discontent that has shaken its very foundations. This is the story of how a nation poised on the brink of prosperity found itself teetering on the precipice of chaos. This is the story of a people yearning for a brighter future who found their voices stifled, their dreams deferred. This is the story of Bangladesh, a nation burning. Sheikh Hasina, the woman who had ruled Bangladesh with an iron fist for over a decade, was gone. On a day that will forever be etched in the annals of Bangladeshi history, the seemingly invincible leader boarded a military aircraft, leaving behind a nation in turmoil. Her destination: Delhi, the bustling capital of neighboring India. The news of her departure spread like wildfire, igniting a maelstrom of emotions. To her supporters, she was a beacon of progress, a bulwark against the forces of chaos. To her detractors, she was a tyrant, a dictator who had sacrificed democracy at the altar of power. But one thing was certain: her era was over. In the wake of Hasina's departure, the pillars of power in Dhaka seemed to tremble. President Mohammad Shahabuddin, thrust into the spotlight, dissolved parliament, effectively hitting the reset button on Bangladeshi politics. The nation held its breath, suspended in a state of anxious uncertainty. The future, once a shimmering tapestry of hope woven by Hasina's grand narratives, now lay in tatters, a blank canvas upon which the anxieties of a nation were splashed in stark relief. The question on everyone's lips was simple yet profound: what comes next? At the heart of this tempestuous storm were the students of Bangladesh, a force of youthful energy and unyielding resolve. Armed with nothing but their idealism and fueled by a burning desire for change, they had taken to the streets, their voices rising in unison against a system they perceived as rigged against them. Their chants echoed through the city, a clarion call for justice and equality. They were the ones who dared to dream of a different Bangladesh, a Bangladesh free from corruption, nepotism, and the stifling grip of authoritarianism. Their dreams were not just for themselves, but for future generations, for a nation reborn in the light of fairness and opportunity. They were the ones who dared to challenge the status quo, to stare down the barrel of the state's repressive machinery. With courage in their hearts and determination in their eyes, they stood their ground, unwavering in the face of intimidation and violence. They were the ones who, in the words of the poet, held fast to dreams. For if dreams die, life is a broken-winged bird that cannot fly. Their dreams were the wings that carried the hopes of an entire nation, soaring high above the clouds of despair and oppression. Section 5. A government's iron fist. The initial response of the Hasina government to the burgeoning student protests was swift and brutal. Accustomed to ruling with an iron fist, they sought to crush the dissent with the same ruthless efficiency they had displayed in dismantling their political opponents. The state-controlled media went into overdrive, churning out propaganda that painted the protesters as hooligans and pawns in the hands of shadowy forces seeking to destabilize the nation. But the students refused to be cowed. The more the government tried to suppress them, the more resolute they became. Their courage in the face of such naked aggression resonated with a population long weary of the government's heavy-handed tactics. Section 6. The spark, a nation's children left behind. The immediate trigger for the protests might have been the controversial job quota system, a policy that seemed to epitomize the deep-seated inequalities plaguing Bangladeshi society. This system, which was intended to provide opportunities for certain groups, ended up creating a sense of injustice and frustration among the youth. The system, which favored the offspring of veterans of Bangladesh's War of Independence, was seen by many as a blatant attempt to entrench the privileges of the few at the expense of the many. This policy, while honoring the sacrifices of war veterans, inadvertently marginalized a large portion of the population. For the millions of young Bangladeshis who had toiled and sacrificed to get an education, the system was a slap in the face. They had worked tirelessly, often under challenging conditions, with the hope that their efforts would lead to a better future. It was a cruel reminder that in Bangladesh, connections trumped merit, that their dreams were secondary to the sense of entitlement of a select few. This pervasive sense of unfairness fueled their anger and disillusionment, leading to widespread protests and demands for change. Section 7. The economy, a house of cards. Beneath the surface of Bangladesh's much-touted economic miracle lurked a darker reality, one that was often overlooked in the glowing reports of progress. While it was true that the nation had made significant strides in recent years, with impressive infrastructure projects and a booming economy, the gains had been unevenly distributed, leaving a large portion of the population in dire straits. The gap between the rich and the poor had widened dramatically, creating a stark contrast between opulence and poverty. Millions of ordinary Bangladeshis found themselves struggling to keep their heads above water in a sea of rising prices and economic instability. The much-vaunted garment industry, often hailed as the engine of Bangladesh's economic growth, was built on the backs of low-wage workers who were the unsung heroes of this economic miracle. Many of these workers toiled long hours in appalling conditions for a pittance, with little hope for improvement. The government's economic policies seemed designed to benefit a select few, often those with political connections or significant wealth, while the vast majority of Bangladeshis were left behind, struggling to make ends meet. Their hopes for a better future were dashed against the rocks of economic inequality, leaving them to wonder if the promised prosperity would ever reach their doorsteps. Section 8. A contested victory, a nation divided. Adding fuel to the fire of discontent was the deeply flawed nature of Bangladesh's democratic institutions. The Awami League, once a party of liberation, had become synonymous with corruption and authoritarianism. The opposition, weak and divided, had been effectively sidelined, their voices silenced by a web of draconian laws and a climate of fear. The 2018 elections, widely condemned as rigged, had only served to exacerbate the sense of disillusionment among the populace. The Awami League's victory, achieved through a combination of voter intimidation and outright fraud, had further eroded public trust in the democratic process. Section 9. A world watches, a nation hopes. As the world watches with bated breath, the people of Bangladesh stand at a crossroads. The resignation of Sheikh Hasina, a watershed moment in the nation's history, has opened up a Pandora's box of possibilities. The path ahead is fraught with uncertainty, and the stakes could not be higher. Will Bangladesh succumb to the siren song of authoritarianism, or will it seize this opportunity to rebuild its institutions and emerge as a beacon of democracy and hope? Only time will tell. But one thing is certain. The future of Bangladesh rests on the shoulders of its people, particularly its youth.